promises in and of themselves, whilst they're a very interesting type theoretical computer sciencey thing, to us pragmatic, can't say the word, pragmatic programmers, it's kind of useless until we introduce the fetch API. So the fetch API is meant to be a replacement for XML HTTP request. And the main thing about it is that it uses promises right out the gate. It is promise-based. And it lets us do all the stuff we did before, but gives us a nice way to do it with promises. And in the language of promises, before when the XML HTTP requesting would throw an exception, if there was like a network error or something like this, that will amount to being a rejection in the promise world. It won't reject if the HTTP status is not 200 though. So it's only for network errors, which is really useful, right? Because it means that you can catch any unexpected errors in a nice way, and you can handle expected errors again in a nice way using .lens. Yeah, so it also takes in, this is more of an API thing, but it takes in obviously the URL that you're going to fetch from, and then it takes in some arguments to like customize how it's going to do the request. The main one that you probably be using is just to change what HTTP method you're going to be using. So this defaults to GET. I've just said here post just to show that you can change it, but you can add more things. You can change the authentication token. You can add headers like the accept, what was it, access control, all that stuff, of course. And again, HTTP method you can also change, but it already looks much nicer, right? So let's play around with it, shall we? So here I have the previous lecture's example with fetching from our Chuck Norris API. So just to recap it, if I open this up, you can see we're going to get some Chuck Norris memes. If I praise Chuck Norris, nothing happens yet. I should do something. Did I open the right thing here? Yeah, I should have. I'm relatively surprised as why that's not doing anything. Oh, because that isn't a real thing. That's why. Haha. Yes, there it is. Oh my God. That is such an inappropriate thing to pop up. Anyway, we're going to convert this into using fetch. So let's go ahead and do that. The first thing is we're just going to get rid of everything. Well, actually, let's do this bit by bit. So I said before that we'd be sort of rarely ever creating a raw promise. And that's true, because if we just call fetch, fetch will create our promise for us. So we don't have to, which is pretty awesome. All we need to give fetch is the URL. And then this is where we're going to do some chaining. So let's do the error case first. So remember, this promise that fetch returns will reject in this case where there's or these cases where there's a network error. So in both of our cases, we're just outputting to the console. So let's just do the same. Not complete. Well, we don't really care what the argument is, but we'll say there was just an error. Okay, but how do we do this inside stuff? Well, we do this by chaining with .then. Now with fetch, you have to be a little bit more, how would you say, stringent about what to do. So what fetch returns when it fulfills is the response object. And it's this response object that we can go ahead and check status and do stuff. So what I'm going to do is similar here. So we can say if res dot, now it has this thing called OK, and this will be true if it was OK and well, false if it wasn't. So we'll fill what happens in the OK case in a second. But if there was an error, so it's not OK, then we'll just see what the error message was. Res.status, same thing. OK. And then what we'll do is we'll just throw a new error. Well, I guess we will We'll just throw this as the error, actually. Remember, if we throw this, this will count as an implicit rejection for this dot then, which will go inside of here. So that's exactly what we want. But if we are okay, then what happens is that to get at the data, now that Fetch has native JSON support, there's actually a method called JSON like this. And as you can see, it actually will return a promise as well. So you can't just use the JSON directly. You have to return, you have to chain with another dot then. So we have the dot then to get out the JSON. We need another dot then to actually get at the data like this. Yeah. So it's two steps. First, you get the result, and then you get the JSON by returning the JSON promise and chaining. And we're just going to do the same thing. But instead of it being called name, this time it will be called data. Yep. So if I just comment all this stuff out, it's many less lines. It just looks nicer. Look at that. So let's go ahead and run this again. And it works. Okay, let's go with another one. Cool. So you can see it works and it's much nicer. And just to show off that we go into these dot catches, let's go ahead and cut the internet again by throttling. Press Chuck Norris, check the console. Oh no, there was a network error. See, we went into that catch. Let's turn the internet back on. And go to our fake website. And we'll press Chuck Norris. In our console, there was another network error, right? 404 specifically. We just don't print out the error, but yeah. So everything works exactly the same way as XHR, but it's just nicer. It's just nicer. Okay. So we have all of this nicety, but you know, it's not a silver bullet. We still have some differences. So let's go through them. Well, probably the biggest thing that this XML HTTP request has going is that it will work even for Internet Explorer 5 or very old versions of browsers. So if that's something that's important to you and Fetch isn't available, then you're kind of stuck with HTTP requests. So, but you should always default, of course, to Fetch if you can. XML HTTP request, to my knowledge, is the only thing that lets you like hook into the large download progress and all of this stuff, like to monitor downloads. You can't do that with promises in Fetch that I know of without, I think, using streams, which is like a separate API that is also built on promises. So it's not as simple as it was with XML HTTP request. Also, canceling promises is not easy, which is something that's actually important, like for timeouts, right? You need to be able to cancel sometimes. So they each have their benefits and their drawbacks, but Fetch, I would say, has more benefits, so you should be using that. Yeah, and the Streams API that you can use with Fetch has a non-trivial learning curve. So if you're interested, then you can go and look that up. There's a link to the docs there. Yeah, but you know, we're moving forward, right? Fetch is awesome. It's nice. It's flexible. It uses promises, which is pretty awesome. But you know, like if you look at it, going back a little bit, if you look at it, like still, we're not in our regular function scope, right? We're doing stuff inside of these steps. And like we want this ability, right? So promises don't give that to us. So can we do better? Well, I think we can. And that's what next lecture is going to be about. We'll be talking about async and await and doing some more fetching stuff. So see you guys then.